my name is Chloe Hull. I wanted to start by saying hello to everybody at Proximity Learning and to introduce myself as a candidate for the virtual math teacher position for the middle grades. So I'll be giving you a little sample of a 6th grade math lesson today on dividing fractions by fractions. And then at the end of this video, I'll be giving a little bit of information about how I would finish off the lesson, since this is just a sample of it, and as well as how you can find the link to the full lesson video in case you'd like to see the full lesson for yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with the slideshow I've prepared so that I can begin the sample of the lesson. Okay, good morning, everybody. Today we are going to be doing a lesson on dividing fractions by fractions. And I love sloths, so I have employed some sloths to help us with this question. Can you really divide a fraction by another fraction? It does seem like a tricky thing to do. I promise, though, that there is a pretty easy step-by-step process we can follow to, in fact, divide one fraction by another fraction. So I think something that can be helpful with these tricky to grasp concepts is putting them in the context of a real-world example. Luckily, the Georgia State Math Standards, which is where I'm from, Georgia, provides a question that we can use to really understand how do we divide one fraction by another fraction. So here's the question they laid out for us. How many 3/4 cup servings are in 2/3 of a cup of yogurt? What? Wait a second, how is that helpful? It's not helpful at first, but I promise you once we walk through the whole process, this real world example really will be helpful in understanding what it means and what it looks like to divide one fraction by another fraction. But first, let's review. Let's remind ourselves of the skills we already know that will be really applicable to understanding this new skill. Okay, so we know about simple division, right? The fundamentals of division. We know that we start with one number, we divide it into a certain number of equal groups to find our answer. So for example, we could take 12 apples and divide them into 2 equal groups so that we can give a set of apples to each of these 2 sloths. And each sloth would end up happily with 6 apples each. So 12 divided by 2 equals 6. We also know about multiplying fractions. We know that we can multiply the numerators of each fraction together to find the numerator of our answer. And we know that we can multiply the denominators of each fraction together to find the denominator of our answer. Then we can simplify, so find the greatest number that can be divided into both the numerator and the denominator. 6 and 20 are both even numbers, so certainly we can divide both of these numbers by 2. 6 divided by 2 would give us 3. 20 divided by 2 would give us 10. So 3/10 would be the simplified answer to this multiplication problem. Now let's return to that original question. How many 3/4 cup servings are in 2/3 of a cup of yogurt? Well, I like to ask myself, what are we starting with? Are we starting with 2/3 a cup of yogurt, or are we starting with 3/4 cup servings? We're starting with just the 2/3 cup of yogurt. So I'm going to put that as my first fraction. Now we're trying to divide that much yogurt into 3/4 cup servings to figure out how many 3/4 cup servings we'll end up with. That will be the answer to our division problem. Okay, I am going to pause the lesson here, and I'm now going to return to just sort of talking through how I would finish up this lesson. Like I said, that was just a little taste of it. So I would now at this point walk the students through the process of converting a fraction division problem into a fraction multiplication problem. So I would explain to them or remind them of what a reciprocal is, how we find a reciprocal of a fraction. And then we would apply that to changing the division problem into a multiplication problem using the reciprocal of the second fraction. We would solve that and get the answer to the problem. And then before we would move on to the independent practice problems and reviewing these as a group, I would actually do a demonstration using measuring cups, 2/3 measuring cup and 3/4 measuring cups, and some water that we would pretend was yogurt, so that I could really show the students what this looks like if we try to do this in a hands-on, tactile way, almost as though we were actually serving up yogurt in the story problem itself. We would find that the real world example of measuring out the water or the yogurt does give us the same answer that we find with just going through the mathematical steps. So we land at 8/9, whether we're using the mathematical steps or whether we're visualizing it with measuring cups. If you would like to see me do this and explain this to the students, I have linked the full lesson video in the description of this video. So I would love for you to watch that so you can get even more insight into how I would teach this concept to students to help them sort of grasp have a more physical understanding of the concept in addition to just knowing the rote mathematical steps. So that is all the time we have. And I want to thank you all for watching my lesson video. And I also want to thank you for considering my application. And I hope you have a happy new year.